I'm a filmmaker, so I'm used to being in front of a camera. So when I mess up, I can say cut and do a do-over. So please excuse my messes. Okay, so I want to talk about Eurocentrism. Please stay. Can you guys hear me when I speak? My voice is quite big.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So Eurocentrism and early print history. Okay, so that's what my documentary, I did a lot of research for it. I'm researching this for about 10 years. Okay. And I also will talk about the song Enlightenment. I am exploring the prospect of possibly doing a documentary on this new project. It's quite exciting, actually. And so, just to define Eurocentrism, focusing on European culture, a history to the exclusion of a wider view of the world. Okay? That's a very common definition. A more acerbic definition would be belief in the superiority of Europeans and overseas extensions, America, Canada, Australia. So, because Americans have a tendency to say, oh, that's Eurocentrism, you're talking about Europe, it's not talking about me, okay? So there are all these awkward words that come up with Euro-Americocentrism and Amero-Eurocentrism, I found, West-centrism, and I've even seen white-centrism. Okay, all these terms come up. But they all come under the heading of ethnocentrism. Okay, so that's something that to keep in mind here. First I'll define it. Evaluation of other cultures according to perceptions originating with our own. And so that's a very common definition. Going back to the acerbic, belief in the superiority of one's ethnic group. And so most cultures do this. Okay, some people in their cultures. Okay. Now this is from Marie Batista. She's an Indigenous writer in Canada. And she says we're all marinated in Eurocentrism. And she's talking about everybody in the world. Now in North America and Europe, of course, we're marinated in Eurocentrism. But she's saying that it affects everybody, okay? And who doesn't love good European sauce on a steak or some tofu, okay? But, all right, the repercussions of Eurocentrism, I'm sure many of you are aware of those, okay? I'll talk about it a little bit. Historical inaccuracy is one of the big ones, okay? When I first started working on the project, I was shocked that Gutenberg was not the inventor of movable metal print. Now, this concept of Eurocentrism, it supports white exceptionalism and white supremacy. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit more. Wait, I'm going the wrong way. Oh, yes, I am. Sorry. Here we are. And also, in Eurocentrism, we deny the intercontinental culture and technological exchanges. And that's what I faced when I first started with this project. Is the European academics all told me, yes, Korea was first, they were aware of it, but they said there was no influence from Korea to Europe at that time. Now, all of you know the Silk Road. There was a lot of exchange along the Silk Road, especially in the 12th and 13th century, just before it. And so here we have it. The claim Gutenberg single-handedly changed the world. So the great white man, he changed the world with one invention, okay? The major invention of the last 1,000 years. So, the Western view of Eurocentrism. So Gutenberg's invention is responsible for most of the important movements of the Western world. Now, if you read Marshall McLuhan, okay, you know, are aware of some of the things that he says. Individualism comes from movable metal print. People began reading, living in the layer of their head, and so they started developing a more individualistic look on the world. Protestantism. Well aware of Martin Luther, he began this, right? His voice was spread all over Europe and changed religion in Europe. Nationalism. People started reading in their own language, okay? Not just Latin, in their own language, started developing nationalism. And capitalism. From 1455 to 1500, 20 million books were published in Europe. Okay, so it's a huge industry began, and also democracy. Okay, it is attributed to movable metal print. Now, here we have Gutenberg. Also, before Gutenberg, the people that were reading were in the guilds. Okay, so they could write in large letters, but with books, the eyeglass industry suddenly developed. Okay, so from Gutenberg, even the eyeglass industry developed, according to people that believe in Gutenberg. It's all false, right? As you're seeing today, Jig-Jig, 1377, 20 years before Gutenberg, but there's more. In the film, the curator, he's actually the Asian department curator, he says, there is no evidence Gutenberg printed the Bibles. It's a shocking revelation compared to what we learned in history class, okay? There's no evidence. I looked for it. There is no evidence that he actually printed the Bibles. And so we have Gutenberg, he's the original OG, okay? And in 2013, I went to the Meteran, the Korean friend. We were told we could go there and fill out an application, and we could see Jig-Jig. So we went to the library, started walking around, asking at different offices. We spent 2 hours here. Nobody had ever heard of Jig-Jig. We realized that Jig-Jig was not even being promoted to anybody in the staff in the building. Excuse me, I have some water. Finally, we went to the research center, and they told us that you guys are idiots. Gutenberg was first. There's no thing like Jig-Jig. So we pushed them. They looked it up on their internet system, and they found it. Okay, and they told us that it's in this building. It's the B&F on Richelieu, and it's stored in the basement in a vault. Okay, and we're not allowed to see it. Okay, nobody's allowed to see it, although they did show us some pictures online. So this is the real institutionalized Eurocentrism. Okay, they're protecting the European view of the world, and it's an extreme view. Okay, and so that's what we were facing when we started this film. Now, in the film, things are representative. B&F, Gutenberg Museum, also the Guillemin Museum, and Dr. Klaus Maynard, they represent this view. Okay, now, even though it's documentary, it's symbolic. Okay, characters become a representative of something else. Okay, and so, actually, Klaus Maynard and I are good friends, but in the film, he's my nemesis. Okay, and so there's me, and I become representative of a different kind of Eurocentrism, which is a naive form of Eurocentrism. Because even though I've lived in Korea before, and I heard of Jig-Jig, I had never done any research. I heard about it at a party in Seoul, and I just thought, okay, they must be talking about a different vocabulary or a different technology of some type. I didn't believe it. I believed it was Gutenberg. Okay, and you hear people talk about, if it's going to work here, okay, well, learn from my education system and the media. I remember in grade 4 I was introduced to Gutenberg. Ever since then I've been reading about it. And so, you know, we put on our cultural goggles, right? And it's very hard to take them off and face what's really out there. It's really difficult. And so, if you think about the ostrich, you know, we go through, he had like the head, hide his head in the sand, and this was me. I heard about Jig-Jig, I didn't believe it. I chose to continue my own worldview. And so Martin Luther King, he calls them polite allies, okay? People that think they're open. I was educated, I'm well-traveled, I thought, hey, I'm not Eurocentric. Suddenly, I discovered one day I was. So that's most Westerners, I think, fit in this category, okay? And so now, at the Meteran, okay, 2023, and some of you maybe saw these articles, world's oldest movable metal print, Jig-Jig, the one I was excited about this. I thought, finally, Jig-Jig is going to get some recognition. And then, I looked at the title, Printing, Gutenberg's Europe. There's nothing here about Jig-Jig. And if you remember back to our curator of the Gutenberg Museum, there's no evidence Gutenberg even printed the Bible. So, and when you look back at it, there's so much information about Gutenberg, but when you try to trace the sources, they're not there. Okay? So now, as Dr. Lee had said earlier, Gutenberg may be representative of that period. Okay? And that's something that would need to be changed in public perception. Because right now, he's a great white man that changed the world. And so, why is the West so uptight about Eurocentrism. And I can't get this to work anymore here. No. There we are. Okay, so possibly the breakdown of Eurocentrism would be a threat to the West's superiority. Okay, and we also have breakthroughs like silk, porcelain, paper. These are all pretty, so it's acceptable it comes from outside. But when we come to something like movable metal print, it's books, knowledge, it's cerebral. Okay, and the Europeans don't want to accept that. Okay, and when I say Europeans, I mean Westerners. And so there's still this a discomfort with accepting that Gutenberg is not the inventor. Gutenberg is, in fact, didn't change the world. So it's also a non-acceptance of foreign influence on major breakthroughs in civilization, like the movable metal print. And last year, I'm going to talk there. Now, when I look at Korean documentaries on Jigji, okay, so there are documentaries on Jigji in Korea, it's always focuses on Korea is first. And that's important. Korea did invent it first, okay? And then it goes into the historic significance of the technology. But rarely does it get on the spiritual significance of Jigji. But they do go into the development of print technology from woodblock to movable metal print, which is important. There's no provenance in Europe of the change from block printing to movable metal print. I think it's like 70 years, when Asia is centuries before it developed. So there's an argument there of how the technology transferred, and also a very critical view of the Western imperialistic history, Eurocentrism, in these documentaries. Now, in our documentary, well, here we go, just a little bit more about Jigji. I can skip through this. It's all about ownership of history, ownership of the artifact itself, which is a big question even today. But here's Sarang Nuss. She was a co-star in this film. She was a K-pop star, okay, but she's really bright, well-educated. She quit K-pop to go to school. And she is representative of this in the Korean view. And when she started out, she represents this ethnocentric and nationalistic. Some of the critics called her nationalistic. And because of her view. Now, it's in the film, and when the first day I met her, okay, this is what she said to me. Why is a white guy making this film? Okay? And she shocked me. I thought, yeah, why is a white guy making this film? But then I said, no, it's not just a Korean history, it's Western. We've done something wrong, we've got to correct this historic wrong. And so my effort was to try and nudge. Now, I knew it wouldn't change things that much, but I wanted to nudge things a little bit in that direction by doing the documentary. So, in our research, actually in 2015, I read an article, and it mentioned this, a letter from the Pope John XXII to the King of Korea in 1333. So, this letter is in the Vatican Secret Archives, and I thought, okay, we'll never be able to see it. But we were able to film it. And the letter thanks the King of Korea, which is Korea, for welcoming Christian Vatican monks into Korea before 1333. Now, before this letter, I think the earliest European that's recognized as being here is Serpetes in about 1590. So, this letter changed Korean history. But when the film was released, we had academics attack us that this was not true, that it couldn't possibly be true. One reason, how could filmmakers come up with something like this? And two, Koryo is not Koryo, it's some other country. Now we asked them to come and sit with us, but they would not. They wouldn't talk to us. And then they said, you only have one source. We had two, but we're waiting for them to come and talk to us. So we faced all this vitriol from the newspapers on this letter. Okay. And later there were symposiums and there is discussion, it's believed now. And so now we're looking at the Song of Enlightenment. And again, we're having a lot of backlash against if this is real or not. The evidence is compelling to me. You know, we have to go through and look at it. We have to talk about this. We shouldn't be just blocking it. We should be talking about is this really the oldest metal print book? Okay? And so I'm not sure. Now, maybe I'm wrong about Eurocentrism. Maybe it's something different when we look at facts, at our new facts. Cognitive dissonance, okay? It's discomfort. That's what I felt when I first found Jigji. I was uncomfortable. Confirmation bias. I think Wusick was talking about this as well. Okay, we tend to seek out information that confirms our beliefs. Social influence. So from our friends, family, and also our colleagues, we're influenced in our beliefs. So if something new comes up, they don't believe it, we don't. We're attached to ideas. I work in film, I work with writers. We fight all the time because people get attached to an idea. Whether it's correct for the project or not, it becomes attached. People attach to it. So we develop strong bonds to our beliefs, our identities, and our worldview. Something comes in that disrupts that, it disrupts your thinking. Skepticism. Again, mistrust and resistance to new facts. Now with Gutenberg, Dr. Sanjay, we interviewed for this project, and he thought investment protection is a big part of it. Okay, there's so many investments in that narrative. Okay, the institutions, the governments, careers are all invested in Gutenberg. Okay, so that's what he thought was possible. Okay, again, my director's telling me cut. Okay, here he is, Dr. Sanjay. Now he has much more in the film. He represents a modern view of Eurocentrism. There we are, we're playing some music, okay? And so I'll skip on here. Now, at the end of the film, we did something, on a film, you spend so many hours with everybody. So at the end of every interview, we did the Jigji dance. We invited everybody, the experts, the staff, the crew, to dance, okay? And it's about us, even though we didn't agree with each other, we're still humans and we can get along and have fun. And that's what we did. And so, it's not about Jigji versus Gutenberg or Jigji versus the Song of Enlightenment. Okay, it's more about interconnectedness. And this is one of the messages of Jigji, is interconnectedness. So it's not about the invention being European, Korean, or Chinese. It's more about the cultural, intercontinental, multi-century development of print. So over hundreds of years across the continent, it's not just one person. And so what I'm suggesting is we need to rewrite history, we need to rewrite print history to reflect that, okay? So we're not so focused on white supremacy. We're focused more on this interconnectedness across the world. So I think that's all we need to do. So I think this film is actually going to be shown a little bit later, and I hope you guys can come and see it.